Hello. So my video today is on the mother wound, and it's been Mother's Day in some parts of the world, just over the weekend I believe, and also not Mother's Day in other parts of the world. But regardless, I felt like it was a really good time to kind of bring this topic through to open it up into a bit of a wider discussion. And just before we go fully into the video, I also have a little message to share, which is kind of been reflected in my own experience over this weekend, and I feel like it's going to resonate with some people who will see this video. So the sort of themes that have been coming up for me over the weekend have really been about kind of tests of faith, really kind of almost questioning really deeply my purpose and what I'm doing and all of this kind of stuff. And I think when we have these tests of faith, sometimes what can happen is we start to think that we're not going in the right direction, or or certain things are not in alignment for us. And that's exactly what these tests of faith are meant to do. They're meant to make you deeply question everything, and it really comes in on this kind of archetypal wave of like a kind of tarot card tarot card energy. The tower is all about destruction, and it's kind of one of the more feared cards in the deck, but really what it speaks of is like destruction and being able to start anew. So it's not something to necessarily be feared, it's something that is to be welcomed, as challenging as that can be. It's this sort of death and rebirth cycle and process, and that is challenging, has its very profound challenges. And so if you've been feeling that way recently, this is kind of just a message just to go, this is exactly what is meant to be happening. You're meant to question everything when you're in this phase, when you're going through this wave, because it allows you to create space for new energies to come in. And that doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. It just means that there's a kind of clearing or a purging process which is occurring. So that was the message. So I'm going to just start talking about the mother wound. So where I kind of wanted to start with this conversation is kind of societally how this is playing out in a lot of ways right now, and has a lot of parallels to this kind of Atlantean timeline theme that we've been seeing with AI and the whole agenda around that. And with this whole AI agenda, there's very much a very strong theme of the replacement of women in society, and this kind of idea that women can be supplanted in some way, that our wombs can be transplanted, that we can create fake wombs to grow children in. And the womb is really the greatest portal on this planet. It allows us to bring through not only information and creative impulse and all of this stuff, but it allows us to bring through children into this world. And though motherhood has various different meanings in different cultures, there is undeniably a thread which runs through it, which is that it is women who are bringing through children through the womb. And of course, it's archetypal, and it has different significances and different ways that it can be performed, and it has its light and its shadow, which we're going to get into more in this video. But there's really, there's something so fundamental that exists across all cultures, all ethnic groups, and all societies about motherhood and about women, and of course men playing their role in that process, of course. But the idea that women can be replaced or supplanted is something that we're going to start to see more within these timelines that we're entering into. This is it's a big challenge, it's a big initiation for humanity in terms of how we handle this. And I truly believe that we're gonna pass this with flying colors. But it's just really important to be aware of that. If you see that, go, okay, I know what that is. I know what that is. That's part of it's part of the Martian impulse. It's almost like part of the inverted masculine impulse, which is something that the cosmic energies of Mars holds within its sphere. And this is one of its manifestations. And so just being cognizant of that. And so, the womb is this amazing, it's like the chalice, it receives, and it's the seat of our creativity. And when I was kind of tapping in around this video, one of the beautiful things that really was coming through is that when the womb is ready to bring forth a soul, it emits a specific song. And that song is almost like, the call of the siren. Our organs emit frequencies, and the womb is no different in that. And it calls souls into being, into the physical plane. And I kind of just wanted to touch a little bit as well about the sort of oppression of women within society. And like, this is a big topic, and one which I could say a lot about. Where we're very much seeing in our time now these sort of polarizations of masculinity and femininity and how they are expressed. And that's kind of normal. It's a kind of natural evolution from us coming from very, very strict gender positionings and gender roles. It's kind of natural for people to rebel almost against that and come out of that. But what we will see is then again more of a balance coming into play, and we're already starting to see that. It's just it plays out at different points for different people, if that makes sense. And I kind of wanted to touch as well on, this sort of idea of hierarchy and the way that women have been seen as beneath men on this hierarchy. And, hierarchy itself isn't a negative thing. It isn't in its essence a dark thing. It is a higher cosmic impulse. And, when we look at other beings from different planes, whether that's angelics, whether that's different galactic beings, they in essence exist on higher dimensional planes. So that is a hierarchy. But hierarchy can exist without competition. It can exist without domination and without exploitation. And the shadow and the inversion of that cosmic impulse is that sort of negative hierarchy where there is exploitation, where there is control, and where there is dominance. And that kind of brings me on to as well how, nothing is truly, everything comes from something sacred, everything, because that which is dark, that which has negative or malicious intentions cannot truly create. It doesn't hold that same divine impulse, so therefore it cannot be a creative force. They can only invert what is sacred. And that's why we see so many repeats of things. That's why we see so many remakes. That's why we see so many things which are not original. And that's because it doesn't contain that same divine essence. It is an inversion. And so moving on to kind of why the mother wound is paramount to our healing. And also, actually, if anybody is more interested about the kind of inversion of divine cosmic impulse, Gigi Young has a great series of videos called, I think it's called Hiding in Plain Sight or In Plain Sight. And that goes really, really in depth about the occult and about those dark occult practices. So I really recommend that series for anybody that's interested. And so why is healing the mother wound so paramount for our deeper sense of healing. And that's because it's our most primal wound. You know, we come from our mother's wombs, and so there's something so deep and so kind of intrinsic about that. And I don't personally think at this point in time that there's anybody on the planet who doesn't have some form of mother wounding, because our mothers have their trauma, and so they, without meaning to, most often, sometimes they do mean to inflict harm. Of course, you know, everybody's human, but sometimes they unintentionally do that. And, you know, especially as we're exiting a dark age, we all have mother wounding. It's just so archetypal. It's such an archetypal wound within our society. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, you know, there's these kind of principles around motherhood which kind of, you know, bind it, which are universal, which are structural in terms of the way that women bring through souls biologically and spiritually. And so the mother wound is really all about receiving, and our capacity to receive or not to receive. It's about nurture, it's about care, it's about attention, it's about all of those things that we associate with the feminine, with those Venusian energies. And then on the flip side of that, you have the dark mother, which often plays out in our society. The one I kind of see a lot is like this sort of smothering mother, is the mother who doesn't want her children to fly the nest, who is so locked into her own expression of motherhood that she doesn't know who she is without being a mother. And I think that that's an initiation that a lot of women have to go through when they sort of transfer from being the mother into the matriarch. You know, those sort of three archetypal stages of womanhood: the maiden, the mother, and the matriarch. And a lot of women really struggle entering into that matriarchal phase because we've lost those true initiatory rites which would have marked that, you know, the honoring of the menopause, you know, all of these kind of things which signify that on a biological level, but then also on a spiritual level. And the matriarch is really about that higher wisdom, that higher knowing, that higher understanding of things. And so many women have been divorced from that. So that makes it really hard when, you know, maybe you were somebody that always dreamed of being a mother, and then you become one, and you kind of didn't know who you were before it. So how are you meant to know who you are after it when that chapter closes? And I think that so many women have, you know, that sort of good girl syndrome of, you know, take care of people, put other people before yourself. And that means that we often don't develop our personalities in a lot of ways. You know, there's a lot of women that struggle to express themselves outside of that form of, well, I'm a nurturer, I'm a carer, I'm a giver, you know, and we're so much more than that. And, you know, this is just one of the things of our time, you know, it's a reflection of our time. And, you know, this sort of rise again of the priestess means that so many women, there's going to be a whole new meaning to matriarch, because there are so many women who are awakening to their connection with the land, are awakening to their connection with the stars. And so they are, you know, when women who are 20 to 40, 50, 60, whatever now, really come into that matriarchal zone, it's going to be so different because they have awakened certain pathways within them, certain remembrances of ancient civilizations, of past lives where they held priestess templates. And so we're going to see a real switch up in that. And yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited for that. So another thing I wanted to touch on as well was birth trauma. So many people have birth trauma, and it kind of makes me think of somebody that I once knew who felt that, you know, they'd had this really great life, but they were really destructive. And I remember being like, feel like something happened to them, like when they were, and this is kind of before I was doing, you know, the work that I'm doing now. This is many, many years ago. But I had this sort of nudge that something had happened to them when they were being born, and that turned out to be correct. They'd had a horrific birth, and it's like even having a very, very supportive life from that point of birth onwards, when you have that trauma being born, it can cause real issues, you know, when that is not addressed. And I personally think shamanic healing is a really beautiful way to be able to address that. Regressions, because those memories exist within us. It's just that most people, you know, we don't access them, but they can be accessed, absolutely. It's just often there's walls, there's layers before you're able to fully, you know, remember that consciously. And so I think that's a really great, you know, when you're really starting to sort of delve into that mother wound, is sort of looking at your birth. And, you know, if your mother's still around and you have a relationship with her, you know, if you have that kind of relationship where you can ask that, I think that's a really, really great thing to be able to do, is to go, you know, what was my birth like? What, you know, tell me about it. How did you feel? How was your pregnancy? All of these kind of things shed a lot of light on your mother wound, because it encapsulates so much. It's your relationship with your actual mother, is your relationship with yourself, with how you mother and nurture yourself, is your relationship with other people, your friends, other members of your family. And then it's also your relationship to that deep archetypal God, Sophia essence within you, you know, which is where it's the spark from which all of this mother line stuff is birthed. You know, it's your relationship to your ancestors. And that's why this wound is so important. And, you know, as a practitioner, one of the first things I do when I tap into somebody's field, I'm like, mother line, let me feel. Let me feel, is it heavy? And most people's is heavy, because it's such a profound relationship. Even if, you know, we were adopted, you know, sometimes particularly if we were adopted, what I'm trying to say is, even if you don't have a relationship with your mother, that archetypal essence informs everything in your life. There's nothing that kind of escapes that, because it's from that which we all came, not only in a physical form, but our souls came from a mother, were birthed from a mothering essence, you know. And so, sorry, I could feel all these dragon beings around me really powerfully then. So yeah, so it's this very elemental, fundamental thing that exists within us. And so I have a little example as well that I think is quite interesting about the mother wound and kind of how it can play out. So I find like people that weren't given enough attention by their mothers, that's a big wound for a lot of people. And I was at the sauna with my mom, funnily enough, and there was a man there who, you know, I sort of speak to him sometimes, but he doesn't really listen. He kind of just talks at you, you know, which is, you know, it's sad when people haven't developed those listening capacities. But me and my mom were kind of having, you know, our own conversation, and he just kept interrupting. And, you know, as we were sort of going back to our own you know, we were being polite and civil, of course, but as we were sort of, you know, would go back to our own conversation, he would start making all these noises. He would start, you know, just really trying to get our attention, even got his phone and started playing music on his phone in the sauna. There's like a little timer. He started flipping the timer around really aggressively to like try and get our attention. And I was like, wow, I was like, that's a real reflection of the mother wound in such a big way. You know, it's like we're these women sitting in the sauna and we weren't giving him our full attention. And so he started, you know, reacting in this way. And so I think that's kind of an example of how it can just affect so many areas of your life. And obviously, you know, I could feel of him, you know, as somebody who is a psychic healer, I could feel off his records, you know, that this was like a big thing for him. But regardless, that is kind of how one of the sort of expressions of the mother wound can play out is, and I think for men it can play out in this way of how they react to women. And, you know, I think a lot of men that have had kind of overbearing mothers kind of can hold this commitment wound where they feel like they cannot commit to women because it brings up this sense of like, oh my God, I'm going to be smothered, I'm going to lose my freedom, all of this kind of stuff. So it literally, it plays out in so many different ways. Another one I was sort of feeling into was men who sexually assault women, who have this kind of belief that they should have this unfiltered access to the feminine form. I find that is also a mother wound, because if you look at babies, you know, they grab, you know, my friend's got a little baby, you know, whenever I'm holding her, she's constantly grabbing, you know, I'm wearing my glasses, you know, because that's babies. They don't have those boundaries. They haven't learned those yet. Their brains haven't fully, you know, matured enough to be able to cognitively process in that way. And that's a really important stage of development for children, is boundaries, is no, don't hit, no, don't touch, no, don't, you know, that learning of that respect. And I think that a lot of men who have, and, you know, I'm sure this can play out for women as well, but, you know, generally speaking, these behaviors are more common in men. That's just, you know, facts, really. And so I think that is part of that mother wound as well, that sort of unfiltered access to the feminine form, and the belief that the feminine form is kind of there for your play, your touching, your aggression, your whatever it is. And I feel like that kind of goes for violence against women, violence against the feminine form as well. And so really it's how we relate to others, how we relate internally, how we nurture ourselves. All of these things are being reflected back to us within our wounds with our mothers. And that's kind of why as well, I think that ancestral healing is one of the most important things that we can do. And I'm going to do a full video on ancestral healing because there's so much to discuss. You know, and I also actually just want to say that, you know, I'm speaking as somebody who, I have not fully healed my mother wound. I don't think it's something that is, you know, just something that's miraculously healed, you know. Is what I'm trying to stress in this video, is how deep it is, and how, you know, we can hold it over many, many different lifetimes and incarnations, and it goes so deep. And so, you know, I'm not coming at this from a place of being like, you know, I've completely healed my mother wound, but I'm coming at it from a place of somebody who had a very fraught relationship with my mother, particularly throughout my teenage years. We could not be in the same room. And we have worked so hard on our relationship. Hi, Mom, if you're watching. We have worked so hard, you know, and are continuing to learn and develop and grow with each other. And it's not always easy to do that, you know, particularly when, you know, for example, with my mom and me, we are the first mother and daughter in our family line for so long to even have a relationship with one another. I know from, so my mom was adopted, and her, you know, it's a complicated story, but her biological mom didn't have a relationship with her mom. And I know from psychic tracking that we are the first one in generations upon generations upon generations to have a relationship with one another. And that's partly because of my background. My mom is originally from the Caribbean and has a history of, you know, our ancestral history is of slavery, you know, from being taken from Africa to the Caribbean. And our ancestral line experiencing its enslavement. And what would happen is that children would be taken off their parents. Often you weren't raised with the family. Sometimes you were, but not always, because there was, you don't want to keep people together. You don't want to keep those bonds together when you're treating them horrendously, when you're, could say a lot about this, but under that kind of treatment, it's not about trying to keep families together. It's about splitting them up, And so, so there wasn't this ability for the mother to bond with the child. That was something that was too painful. And so, that's why my mom was put up for adoption. Her mom could not bond with her because it was too painful. And so that same kind of patterning has played out with me and my mom and our relationship. And we've had to work through so much stuff because we're the first to do that in hundreds of years, and a lot of people, especially star CD types, and I've said this before, your first mission is to clear up the ancestral line. You will have likely picked a family that is full of trauma, that is full of pain, that is full of anguish, and you will have likely done that because you have the capacity to be able to clear it up. And so, that's why ancestral healing is so core to everything, because it informs so much of how we relate to the world. And, to kind of touch on epigenetics a little bit as well, and how our genes, how our cells hold data, how our cells hold memory. My mom's mom was had various different difficulties. I didn't grow up with her, but certain things in my life mirrored the exact same patterns that she had been through. And when I came into the knowledge of this, I was like, oh my God, that's actually kind of scary how much similarity there is, because the cells hold that data. And there's all these studies about how you're essentially in your grandmother's womb. She holds the eggs, and those eggs hold eggs. And, I'm not a scientist, but you can look it up. And so that's kind of how these certain traumas and things get passed down. And I think in society, so many people aren't even ready to have that conversation about how the traumas that your grandmother went through are within you, and how in many ways, if you want to heal, it's kind of your responsibility to clear that up. And that's, it's a lot for a lot of people to really sit with. And so ancestral healing, absolutely paramount to our journeys. And I find that one of the best ways to kind of go about with kind of healing this as well is through forgiveness. And that can be really, really hard. That can be a challenging, painful road. And we have to witness ourselves. We have to witness our parents and the horrific things that they've experienced. We have to witness our grandparents. And, even if you don't know your family history, you can still do this. It's about energy. It's about energetics and emanating that from your heart space. And this is, it's a long road. It's not something that is healed overnight. It takes time. It takes time to really honor ourselves, to honor our line, to honor the things that have happened. And forgiveness really allows us to go to that 0 point energy. It allows us to, pain holds a charge, trauma holds an energetic charge in our field, which means that we're going to keep magnetizing that pain towards us, because it's our way of going, we need to work this out. So it's going to keep being reflected back at us. But when we're able to release, when we're able to clear our akashics, when we're able to clear our ancestral line, what happens is our field starts to level out and it starts to reach that 0 point field. And from there, that's when we're free to create from that space. We're no longer bound by ancestral karma, you know, because the karma of your ancestors is now your karma, because you chose on some level. A lot of us choose that, especially if you're resonate with being a starseed, you'll choose your line. Often people are just kind of stuck in their line. But either way, the responsibility is on us, the onus is on us, it's our karma to clear that. And I think as well, this is important for this time to kind of, which is kind of why I wanted to put this video out now as well, is because we're going into Gemini shortly on the 21st, but then we're going to go into Cancer on around the 20th, 22nd of June. And you'll often find that your mother wound really starts to get reflected back to you when we're in Cancer season, because Cancer is astrologically holds the deepest archetypal resonance with the mother, with the moon. And so I think it's important to kind of be, you know, preparing yourself for that, whether that's, you know, however subtly that is, that often that's when it comes up. That's when it starts to be like, okay, yeah, hi, I'm here. This is what, you know, needs to be looked at. And often that will kind of reflect back to us in the way that we're nurturing ourselves as well. Cancer is all about nurture. It's all about the home. Resonates with those 4th house energies, which is all about the home, childhood, upbringing, family, all of that stuff. And I see that in a lot of people, a lot of clients around that end of June, July time. The mother wound, the wound of the home, the family comes up to be for its kind of next level, its next layer of shedding. And so talking kind of elementally for a moment here as well, the mother wound really corresponds with the elements of water, that kind of emotion, and then also with the element of earth as well. And these are the feminine elements. The air and fire are the masculine ones. And so that can kind of look like, you know, our mother wound being out of balance can kind of show up in our energy field as our elements of water and earth being out of balance, whether that's we struggle to feel our emotions or we're kind of overly emotional, we kind of feel them almost too much in a sense, not feeling grounded, not feeling abundant. You know, that's very much the energies of earth, not feeling like we can connect with our abundance. So all of those things are kind of something to examine if you feel that resonates with you on some level, is kind of looking at how abundance was reflected back to you within your family unit, looking at how, you know, your mother's kind of relationship with money, with wealth, and your mother's relationship with her emotions, because that's likely an ancestral pattern. It's crazy how much in sessions I see this pattern, and I can see, you know, I'll have an ancestor come forward from 10 generations ago and go, I started this one, you know, and it's still playing out in your life now. And that's ancestral karma, you know, and nobody is free from that unless you know, choose to do that work. And the beautiful thing that happens when we do that work is our children don't have to do it. They are freed from that. If you clear something from your field like that, you clear those big cords, you clear those big contracts, you clear those vows and oaths and all of that stuff, which is, you know, wreaking havoc in your field. Not only does that help you, but if you choose to have children, it also absolves them of that. And, you know, even your brothers, your sisters, whatever, your siblings, their children, you know, if it won't clear the you know, the brother and sister, whatever, might have their own stuff which gets passed to the children, of course. But those older contracts and things like that, that is cleared for them as well. And so, you know, there's so many benefits, and you're supporting the earth in her healing, in her ascension. Even if you don't want children, even if you don't have any siblings, that doesn't mean you're absolved from dealing with this. If you want to not deal with it, then, you know, you're probably not watching this video, you know? And so, you know, our wounding with the mother wound as well, not only is, you know, ancestral, but also has a lot of past life significance as well. So you may be somebody that is incarnating over and over in the same family line. So you've probably been your mum's mum, you've probably been your mum's brother, you've probably been your mum's sister, whatever. But then there's also people who this will be the first time you're incarnating into this particular family group. But again, you may still have past life wounding from other mothers that you've had, you know, and that can still inform your, you know, the way that you're living, the way that you're experiencing life. It can also be wounding from you being a mother, from you being a woman, from you being even a mother in a galactic timeline, from you having mother wounding from galactic timelines. That can also be playing out. I've seen that before. I also get, and I don't know why this is, but I get a lot of people's like star mothers coming through in sessions with people, which is really beautiful and really, really interesting. And yeah, so that, you know, you can still be kind of holding that wounding, but connecting, you know, if you are at a sort of your point where you feel that is in alignment for you, connecting with those star mothers is so healing. My Syrian mother is one of my, I can feel her right here. As I said that, her energy is so incredibly healing. And when I connected with her, it was just healing on, you know, next level. But I had to work through loads of earth-based, this lifetime mother healing before I could reach that, you know? So it's like focusing on what is in front of us first, you know? So yeah, so I think that's pretty much everything. I didn't have too many notes for this video. They kind of wanted it just to be, my guides really wanted this just to be kind of channeling through, you know? So I hope it's still been clear and concise. And then actually my last point was related to working with the goddess in terms of your healing, in terms of healing the mother wound. Isis, Kuan Yin, or Hathor are really beautiful energies to connect with in terms of healing that mother wound, and can really kind of help to broaden that perspective, especially if we've had like really, really deep pain with our mothers, where we've been really neglected, where we've been abused, that kind of thing. That can be really, really helpful to kind of witness the archetype of the mother playing out in a form that is not abusive, that is not harmful in that way. So that can look like setting up a little altar, a little shrine, doing a meditation. I'm going to leave a couple of meditations linked below, which are really great for healing the mother line as well. So yeah, and then the last thing as well, which was kind of curious, but I just wanted to share it in case it resonates with somebody. When I was kind of tapping in around this whole thing, I just kept seeing gold, like the frequency of gold, like that just coming through so strong. And it's funny because gold is often associated more with the masculine impulse, with that solar kind of energy. But there was something really strongly coming through around gold and the feminine. And so I don't know if that's kind of that sort of merger of those masculine and feminine energies. I'm not sure. I need to sit with that a little bit longer, but perhaps it has some deeper resonance for somebody watching this. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this video. As always, I'm so keen to hear your perspectives and how you received this information and where and if it resonated with you. I'm always so thankful for all the beautiful messages I get from people who have found these videos helpful in some way. And yeah, I will see you in my next one. Thank you.